treatment to treat his diabetes, later collapsed and ultimately died of the disease. Don Lane from Christchurch in Dorset was a delivery driver for the parcel company DPD. He missed appointments with diabetes specialists because he felt under pressure to cover his round or else face a daily £150 fine. DPD delivers parcels for Marks & Spencer, Amazon and John Lewis. It only pays couriers for each parcel delivered and treats drivers as self-employed franchisees, which means they receive no sick pay or holiday pay. Before he died, Don Lane had collapsed 4 times, the first time in December 2016. When he collapsed the second time, in January 2017, he then fell into a diabetic coma at the wheel of his van. In July last year, Don took a day off work to visit a doctor, but DPD fined him £150 for missing the day. The threat of another fine meant Don was terrified of taking any more time off work. He collapsed for the 3rd time in September. Don then missed crucial medical appointments which could have prevented his early death at 53. He collapsed for the 4th and final time in late December. He died on January the 4th this year, leaving his wife Ruth, to whom we're going to speak in just a moment, and 22-year-old son Jordan. DPD has said it's profoundly sorry for his death. It says Don shouldn't have been fined for missing work to attend a hospital appointment, but says it refutes the claim that he was under pressure and under threat of a fine. So do you work in an industry which fines you for missing work? Do call us 08000 288 291. Email vine@bbc.co.uk. Let's speak first of all to Ruth, who's in Bournemouth. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Jeremy.
And it obviously was quite a while coming, his illness, and he was struggling to keep working.
He's been ill for a good year now. That first time when I found him slumped at home, I thought, that's never happened before. And then when I got the phone call in the January from his work, I was so scared. I was told he was unconscious. The ambulance was with him, and they're going to take him to the Royal Bournemouth, and I was to go straight there. Meanwhile, they'd got another courier to take the parcels off his van to carry on the deliveries, and somebody took his van back to the depot. And when I saw him, his sugar levels had got low because he didn't have time to eat, and that's his fault, I suppose. But so much pressure, time deliveries, and he never used to have a break, a dinner break as such. They do hourly slot deliveries, timed, and if they miss their time slots, they get told off, and so much pressure on them, and leading up to Christmas, they were told they had to work 6 days. I don't know, if I could wind back the time, Jeremy, and...
Well, I can imagine you can sort of see now how ill he was, but I guess he's just forging on.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I don't know how long he'd been in the coma for, but apparently the diabetes starts attacking your organs. His kidneys got damaged. His blood pressure was so high, it was 220, really high.
And was it type 2 diabetes?
He's type 2, but he was on insulin, Jeremy. He got it when he was 40. But yeah, weirdly enough, his pancreas just wasn't working, and I think that's what the reason is. And yeah, he was on insulin. Yeah, he would inject himself once in the morning and once in the evening. But of course, they go into work, and they're not paid until the first parcel's delivered, which can be about 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock sometimes if the trunk is late in. But from 7 o'clock onwards, they're loading their vans. It's all physical work, and bless him, his friends would give him chocolate and just to keep his sugar levels up. He had sandwiches and that, but he'd just eat on the run, he'd no actual break,
Did he tell you when he'd been fined for missing the day's work?
Well, this is a weird thing. He went back into work the next day because it was to do with his eyes. They put these drops in, and you can't drive afterwards because I don't know if Rob's with you, but...
Yeah, he is, yeah.
He is. Rob's got the email from this John Cameron, and it's the most cold email. It's almost... basically saying that he saw no reason why Don couldn't have gone into work before he went to hospital or come back to work after. Basically, the £150 fine stands.
Let me get
sorry,
Rob.
Jeremy.
No, not at all. Just you hang on there, Ruth. I've
Okay,
got
then.
Robert Booth, reporter at The Guardian, there, and you've been following this story for a while, and while Dom was ill and everything, and so they were pretty cold with him, were they?
Yeah, this moment in July last year, when Don decided to go to one of his appointments with the eye specialist because his eyes were being affected, was upsetting for him, and he got in touch with me after that because we'd previously written about the way that DPD has this system of charging drivers £150 if they can't cover their round or find a replacement. And he sent me this kind of correspondence between him and his managers where he disputed the fine, and he said, look, I knew about this hospital appointment months ago, and I told you about this hospital appointment, so it's completely unreasonable to be fining me. And the response that was forwarded to him from one of the senior managers at DPD says that really, I'll sum it up, but in essence, he should have been doing his day's work prior to, or at least delivering as many parcels as possible prior to going on the appointment. And he says, I fail to understand why a full day off was required, and as such do not see that the breach should be rescinded. I do believe that the ODF, which is the name that the DPD has for these self-employed drivers, I do believe that the ODF being able to, at the very least, have provided a half-day service based on his appointment time should still suffer half-day damages. And Don fires back, actually. He says he strongly objects to this. He says that his manager didn't want him to take a whole day off. His manager did want him to take a whole day off rather than a half day because he didn't want people working half days. And he goes on to say, I've cancelled so many appointments because I couldn't make the time to get there that the renal department, in other words, the kidney department at the Royal Bournemouth Hospital where he'd been referred, have stopped treating me and have written to my doctor to inform him. Do you honestly think that I wouldn't inform the depot? They know the situation.
Right. So he was in a terrible situation, Ruth, where he's trying to get to these appointments, but he's also trying to do his job, and he can't do both.
No, he would say to his friend at work, Prince would say, haven't you got to the hospital today? And he said, I'm just not going to be able to make it in time because his handset they've got, it tells them which priority time deliveries, and it actually tells you what time you finish work as well. And there's no way he could have done all those parcels and made his hospital appointment. So he would ring, I'm hoping he rang to cancel. And of course, after 3 appointments, I didn't realise they stopped the treatment, So
do you know how many drop-offs he was doing in a day?
Not many. If I said he was working in the sticks, do you know what I mean? Out in the countryside. He would do one delivery, then it would be a good 10-minute drive to the next. Not like there was 5 in one street. So he was doing about 69 deliveries a day.
And we've had this statement from DPD, the company, which says that they are devastated by the news of his passing, shocked and saddened. They were monitoring his health. They talked to him to make sure he was fine. Is that all wrong?
Do you know what? I've not heard a word from them. I got some flowers from the franchise department. They're lovely, but they don't seem to have any power over decisions made, from the manager at the Bournemouth depot. His decision stood, and then I had is his name John Cameron, with the email.
Right, yeah.
I couldn't understand why Don wanted to take it. How dare he, basically take a day off to go to hospital. It wasn't like it was a trivial thing, it was to do with diabetes. But I've not had a letter from them. I've not had anything from head office. No apology. Nothing. They've apologised, it seems to be, to everyone else, but nothing to me.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us, Ruth.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best to you and Jordan.
Thank you.
And there's another angle to this, Robert, to do with the status of Don and others. And you mentioned that it was the particular 3-letter acronym, was it, for him? He's an
ODF.
ODF. In other words, he's not staff, is that right? So he's kind of treated as an independent contractor.
Yeah, they call them franchisees. So the idea is that essentially they've got 5,000 of them. All the people who are delivering parcels for DPD in DPD liveried vans and in DPD uniforms, almost all of them anyway, I think are on-demand franchisees, which I think is what ODF stands for.
So the company will say, if questioned by the tax authorities, they're not our staff because we don't give them paid holidays and sick pay and so on. They sort of look after themselves. Is that right?
That's the model, and that's essentially the gig economy model, isn't it, that we're seeing more and more of in our country. And I think the estimate is that there's about 1.1 million people now working in the so-called gig economy, and it ranges from taxi drivers to couriers to delivery workers bringing you your takeaway. There's more and more people in that sector, and the effect of that employment status, which is self-employed, is that the company, it's hard to use the language, the company employing these people, although they're not technically employing them, doesn't have to provide sick pay or holiday pay, or even guarantee the national living wage, which is the minimum wage that we have in this country. It's a rather grey area of the economy, but it's one that is increasingly important. And the difficulty is, and the arguments that are being had about this, is actually, how far is this bogus self-employment in these cases? And lots of these companies are currently facing employment tribunal cases, effectively court cases, which are challenging whether these workers are actually self-employed, and in fact, shouldn't they rather be treated as workers? And as these go through the employment tribunals keep ruling in favour of the workers in these cases. And I believe that DPD is one of the companies facing employment tribunal at the moment.
Thank you very much indeed. Robert Booth, reporter at The Guardian newspaper, who followed the story of Don Lane, who has sadly died, and we were talking to Ruth, his widow.